development! Take it down, Mr. Holloway. You do not own this. We all do.
You just stole our lake. Diane Pritchard's voice sliced through the evening like a siren, sharp enough to freeze every conversation on the cul-de-sac. 30 neighbors followed her down the dirt path, phone cameras raised like a firing squad. The sign I had just planted gleamed in the amber light. Private property county, deed on file. I held the cordless drill, its motor still ticking from the last screw. Diane's face was red, her navy blazer crisp, her clipboard clutched like a weapon. "Take it down, Mr. Holloway," she barked. "You do not own this. We all do." I did not move. I had been through enough arguments to know silence could cut deeper than shouting. Behind her, the crowd murmured. Someone whispered, "Call the sheriff." Another said, "He cannot just block the lake." I turned the drill off, set it gently in the toolbox, and faced them. "Yes, I can." My voice was calm, steady, because I paid for it. I have the deed, the survey, and the water rights certificate. All filed, all public. That single word "paid" hit the crowd like gasoline on a campfire. A car door slammed. Deputy Wade Fletcher stepped out, adjusting his belt as he walked over. Mid-30s, methodical, the kind of cop who could defuse a bar fight just by breathing. "Evening, folks," he said. "What is going on?" Diane turned, seizing her moment. "He is blocking access to our community lake. We have used it for 40 years. He has no right." Fletcher looked at me. "You got paperwork, sir." I handed him the folder, deed of sale, certificate of water rights, county survey. He read each page slowly, lips tightening as he reached the government stamps. Behind him, the neighbors grew restless. "He forged it," someone hissed. "It is a scam." Fletcher closed the folder. "Ma'am," he said evenly to Diane, "this looks legitimate." Diane stepped closer. "We have easement rights. 40 years of public use means something." I met her eyes. "Not without a recorded agreement." She blinked, thrown. "We do not need one. It is called prescriptive easement." "Then name the 5 requirements," I said. "Hostile use, continuous, open, exclusive, statutory period. You fail at 3. Her mouth opened, then closed. Fletcher cleared his throat. "County recorder confirms title is private. Any dispute goes to civil court. For now, this man owns the lake." The crowd deflated. A few muttered, a few filmed, most walked away. Diane's glare could have stripped paint. "This is not over." "No," I said quietly. "It is just starting." When the last car left, the world fell silent, except for water brushing against the rocks. I knelt beside the post to tighten one last bolt and noticed something half buried in moss, a granite stone marked CR-48, the old county engineer's emblem faint beneath grime. Beneath that, a second line barely visible. Federal property transferred 1,952. My stomach tightened. Federal property. Why would a private lake carry that mark? I took a photo, pocketed my phone, and watched the deputy's taillights vanish. Fletcher had paused earlier, hand on his cruiser door. "You might want to look up County Record 1,948, he had said. "There is something you should know." Then he drove off. Back in my truck, I replayed his words. Something I should know. The folder sat on the passenger seat, edges worn from my fingerprints. I flipped it open, scanning again, nothing about federal anything. Just the deed, signed and sealed. Still, that carving gnawed at me, a leftover symbol from the Waterway Commission, or something the bank had overlooked. Either way, it meant the land's history was deeper than anyone thought, and in small towns like this, history had a nasty habit of waking up angry. 3 days earlier, before the confrontation, I sat in a sterile bank conference room under buzzing fluorescent lights, staring at that same folder for the first time. The loan officer, Clifton Hayes, slid it across the table with both hands. "Everything's here," he said. "Title history, survey, liens all clean now." He leaned back, watching me over his glasses. "Truth is, nobody has wanted this property in decades. It is cheap because it is trouble." I smiled. "I specialize in trouble." Hayes smirked. "You will fit right in at Old Mill Lake." He was not exaggerating. The paperwork mentioned unresolved community access claims. The words sounded harmless then, like bureaucratic dust. But as I flipped through yellowed pages, I saw a penciled note: See Federal Waterway Plan 1948. Military thing, Hayes muttered when I asked. Lake was part of a government reserve after the war, declassified. County sold it in '53, been private ever since. So why the price drop? HOA drama, he said flatly. They think they own the water. You buy the land, you buy the fight. I should have walked away. Instead, I signed. The first time I saw the property, fog hugged the shoreline like breath on glass. The lake shimmered dull silver under an overcast sky. Birds scattered as my truck crunched along the gravel road. It felt isolated, almost sacred. The signpost from the 1940 still stood near the water, half rotted. Old Mill Lake County Reserve Est, 1948. I remember thinking it looked like a relic from another war, another era. That was the moment I knew I wanted it, not for money, not for prestige, but for the quiet. I had spent too many years fixing other people's messes in the city. This lake felt untouched, maybe forgotten. I did not realize forgotten places often come with people who refuse to let them stay that way. When the deal closed, the county clerk, Jolene Sutton, handed me the official copy. Congratulations, Mr. Holloway. You are the proud owner of 4 acres and 1 angry homeowners association. I laughed. She did not. I am serious, she said. They call every spring asking if the deeds expired. Can deeds expire? She smiled thinly. Not unless someone fakes one. That night I went online, scrolling through the HOA's community forum. Threads stretched back years' arguments about lawn colors, mailboxes, and fishing permits. Buried deep in 2019, I found a post by Diane Pritchard. Reminder: lake access remains open under historical community rights, regardless of county disputes. Underneath, someone commented, "Is it actually ours?" Diane's reply was chillingly confident. "It is ours because we say it is." I leaned back in my chair, staring at those words. Power did not come from law here. It came from repetition. They had told the same lie long enough that people believed it. 2 days before the standoff, I went to the county archive, hoping to find that 1948 file Fletcher had hinted at. The archivist, Marvin Caldwell, was pushing 70, slow but sharp. He led me into a basement room filled with metal shelves and dust-colored light. Old Mill Lake, he said, pulling down a brittle folder. Federal Waterway Project 194-81952. Cancelled before completion. Declassified. The top memo, stamped in fading red ink, read, "Transfer to county with restriction. No public easement unless recorded." I whispered the line aloud. Marvin nodded. Government hated ambiguity. That is why they wrote it. I asked for copies of everything. By the time I left, the folder was twice as thick. My fingers smelled like dust and history and something else. Validation. The next morning, I returned to the lake to install the sign. The air was still, heavy with the promise of conflict. I drilled holes into the post, mounted the metal plate, and stepped back. That was when I heard Diane's voice behind me. The rest you already know. Now, hours after the crowd had left, the truth began to sink in. The HOA had not just been mistaken, they had been lying for decades, propped up by arrogance and ignorance. That stone marker was not just a relic, it was evidence. I brushed away the last bits of moss, tracing the letters with my thumb. CR 48. Federal property transferred 1952. The engraving was older than any HOA rulebook, and if history had taught me anything, it was this. Paper fades, but stone remembers. I stood, the evening chill crawling up my spine. Somewhere behind the tree line, a car engine started, then cut off. I turned, scanning the road, nothing but shadows. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe not. Either way, I knew what tomorrow would bring. Diane Pritchard was not the kind of person who lost quietly, and I was not the kind of man who backed down once the truth was written in stone. By the time I got home, the adrenaline had turned to something heavier, curiosity wrapped in unease. The folder sat open on the kitchen table, papers spread like a map of someone else's mistakes. I poured a drink, stared at the photocopy of that 1,948 memo, and realized the signature at the bottom, E.H. Crandall, Federal Waterway Division, matched the initials etched on the stone beside the lake. That was not coincidence. That was a breadcrumb. Someone 70 years ago had made sure the truth was buried in plain sight. The next morning, I called the county recorder's office. "Hi, this is Grant Holloway," I said. "I need access to all files connected to County Record 48. The woman on the line paused. "That is an old one. Most of those were transferred to archives. I have already seen the archive copies. I need the original survey maps, the ones that show jurisdiction changes." She hesitated again. "You would need a special authorization for that. It is federal origin property." That word again, federal. My chest tightened. "Who do I ask for authorization?" "County Counsel's office," she said finally. "Claire Donovan." I had seen her name once on an old legal memo attached to the sale documents. By noon, I was standing in her office, a small, glass-walled room lined with binders. Claire was in her early 40s. Sharp suit, sharper tone. "You bought the lake," she said, flipping through my folder. "That is brave or reckless. We have not had a buyer willing to take that risk since the 80s. "I am not afraid of paperwork," I said. She gave me a measured smile. "Paperwork is fine. It is people that get messy. You want to see the federal transition file." "Yes," she stood. "Follow me." The records room smelled like dust and toner. Claire pulled a thick binder from the shelf labeled Federal Transfer 195-21953. She flipped to a page marked with a red tab. Here, she said, "This is the official transfer of Old Mill Lake from the U.S. Waterway Commission to county ownership. The language is clear. No public easement unless recorded by deed or legislative act. That condition has never been satisfied." "So the HOA's claim is fiction," she said, finishing my sentence. "They have been told repeatedly, they just prefer the lie." I exhaled. "Can I get a certified copy of this?" Claire nodded. "Sure, but understand this. Once you make it official, you are stepping into a political firestorm. They will try to turn public opinion against you. Let them try." Her smile deepened slightly. "Good answer." I left the building with a folder heavier than when I arrived. The sky had gone gray, thunder grumbling somewhere beyond the courthouse square. On the drive home, I saw Diane's silver SUV parked near the turnoff to the lake. She was leaning against the hood, phone to her ear, waving her free hand like she was orchestrating an army. When she saw my truck, her smile tightened. She ended the call and got in her car without a word. That night, the first vandalism happened. At 2:37 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion alert. I opened the trail camera app and froze. Two figures in hooded sweatshirts, flashlights in hand, walked straight to my new sign. One yanked at the bolts, the other kicked the post until it cracked. They tossed the metal sheet into the brush. The next clip showed them kneeling by the CR-48 marker. One pulled out a hammer. The sound of metal striking stone echoed faintly through my speakers. I watched in disbelief as fragments scattered. Then they left, fading into the dark. I did not sleep. By dawn, I was driving back to the lake, camera still playing on my dashboard. The sign was gone. The post hung crooked. The marker was chipped, but still legible. CR-48. The eagle emblem, though scarred, remained intact like it refused to be erased. I took new photos, then called the sheriff's department. Fletcher answered. "Morning, deputy. Got a vandalism report for you." He sighed. "Let me guess the lake. Trail cam. Caught it all. Faces covered, but timestamps are solid. Send me the footage." "Already did," I said. "And Fletcher, they went after the marker. They knew exactly where to hit." He was silent for a beat. "Then they know more than they should." At 10 o'clock, my phone rang. "Claire Donovan. I got your footage," she said. "That is destruction of private property and tampering with a federal artifact. I am forwarding it to the county sheriff and legal division. You might want to prepare for escalation." "Escalation. They will lawyer up." I laughed without humor. Good. So will I. 2 days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox-heavy cream paper embossed with the HOA's logo. Cease and desist. The letter accused me of unlawful interference with community assets, demanded I restore public access, and threatened legal action under prescriptive rights. I almost admired their nerve. I sent a copy straight to Claire. Her reply came within an hour. Ignore it. It has no standing. But document everything. That weekend, I replaced the sign, bigger, thicker, bolted into concrete. This time, the message was impossible to miss. Private Property County Record SAR 19480-847 verified ownership. When I finished tightening the bolts, I heard footsteps on the gravel. Diane again, flanked by 2 men I did not recognize. She was smiling this time, the kind of smile that belonged to someone rehearsing victory. "Morning, Mr. Holloway," she said. "Meet my attorney, Russell Blackwell." The man extended a hand. Polished, confident, expensive watch. "Mr. Holloway," he said smoothly, "we are here to discuss your unlawful claim." I folded my arms. Unlawful. That is a big word for a lawyer standing on private land. Russell chuckled. Prescriptive easement, my friend. 40 years of uninterrupted use, grants, rights, whether recorded or not. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the copy of the federal transfer document, and handed it to him. "Read the last line." He scanned it. His jaw shifted. "No public easement unless recorded." "Exactly. You do not have a record. You have a tradition built on trespass." Diane bristled. "You cannot erase history." "I am not erasing it," I said. "I am correcting it." Russell straightened. "Then we will see you in court." I smiled. "Bring your best printer. You will need it to fabricate that easement." They left without another word. I watched their car disappear down the road, tires kicking dust, and for the first time I realized how far this might go. This was not just about a lake. This was about exposure, about pride, about the kind of people who could not stand to be told they were wrong. That afternoon, I drove to the address Fletcher had scribbled on a scrap of paper, Vernon Ashford, former HOA treasurer. He lived 15 miles out, in a small house that looked like it had not been painted since the early 2000s. He opened the door before I knocked. "You are the new owner," he said. "I am." He nodded slowly. "Took you long enough. Come in." The living room smelled like coffee and dust. Vernon was in his 70s, hair silver, eyes sharp. He motioned toward a stack of boxes on the table. "Those are HOA records from my years on the board. I kept copies. Diane threatened to sue me if I said anything, so I did not. But I knew this day would come." He opened one of the boxes, pulled out a folder labeled 2001 Legal Correspondence. "Here," he said, handing me a letter. It was from the county council, dated the 9th of April, 1985. "Claims of prescriptive easement are without merit. Property remains privately owned." Below that, Diane's handwritten note, "Ignore. Continue access. Nobody will challenge us if we act like we own it." I felt my jaw tighten. She knew. Vernon nodded. "We all did. But only a few of us cared. She said the law was for people who get caught. I quit after that meeting." He pulled out another document, a spreadsheet of collected HOA fees, labeled Lake Maintenance Fund 199-82005. They charged homeowners for lake maintenance, he said. On land they did not own. How much? Over 50 grand. I stared at the paper, the numbers glowing like embers of corruption. "Would you testify?" He did not hesitate. "Yes. I have been waiting 20 years to tell the truth." The next day, I brought everything to Claire's office. The letters, the spreadsheets, the handwritten notes. She spread them across the table, scanning each page. "This is not just a civil dispute anymore," she said quietly. "This is fraud." I nodded. "Then let us treat it like one." She picked up her phone. "I will contact the sheriff. We will open an investigation. But Grant, be careful. When people like Diane feel power slipping, they get desperate." I smiled faintly. Good thing I am not easy to scare. That night, thunder rolled again over Old Mill Lake. Lightning flashed across the water, illuminating the new sign and the scarred stone beside it. For the first time, I did not see the lake as property. I saw it as a mirror reflecting greed, pride, and truth all at once. Somewhere out there, Diane was plotting her next move. Somewhere else, Vernon was probably sleeping better than he had in years. And me. I sat in my truck, engine idling, watching the rain hit the windshield, and realized something I had not before. Winning was not about the deed or the documents. It was about drawing a line in the dirt and daring them to cross it. 2 weeks after Diane's lawyer threatened to see me in court, I realized they had already started the war. It began quietly, letters slipped into mailboxes, neighborhood posts calling me a thief, screenshots of my property sign circulating with captions like, "He bought the lake to keep us out." By Monday, the story had spread far beyond Willow Creek. Someone tagged a local news outlet. By Tuesday, a reporter was parked outside my driveway, camera rolling, asking whether I had stolen a community treasure. I did not answer. The truth was not a soundbite. It was a stack of paper thick enough to choke the lie. Claire called that night. "They are playing to emotion," she said. "We will counter with evidence." "Do we go public?" I asked. "Not yet. Let them speak first. The higher they climb, the harder they will fall." Her voice was steady, but I could tell she enjoyed the fight. So did I. That weekend, I drove back to Old Mill Lake. The air smelled of pine and wet earth. Someone had spray-painted "thief" across my new sign. The cameras caught it 3 kids in hoodies, 2 with HOA badges pinned to their shirts like armor. I downloaded the footage, forwarded it to Fletcher, and kept installing more cameras. 4 this time, hidden, higher, invisible, even to careful eyes. If they wanted to turn this into a spectacle, I would give them a stage and a spotlight. At dawn, I stood near the stone marker again, the chipped CR-48, catching the first sunlight. It looked wounded, but alive. The more they tried to destroy it, the more it seemed to endure. Maybe that was a metaphor for the truth itself, ugly when cracked, but impossible to erase. My phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "Drop the claim, or we will make you wish you had." I screenshotted it, sent it straight to Claire. "Keep every threat," she replied. "They are digging their own grave." 3 days later, Sheriff Merrick asked me to meet at the courthouse. When I arrived, Claire was already there with a binder labeled Old Mill Lake Fraud Investigation. Merrick flipped it open. "We have interviewed your witness, Mr. Ashford. His testimony checks out. We also subpoenaed the HOA's financials. Preliminary results, missing funds, fake maintenance expenses, even a private insurance policy on the lake." He looked up. "They have been running a scam for decades." Claire tapped the table. "We will need a public record press coverage, county minutes, everything documented. No more backroom whispers. Sunlight kills mold." I smiled. "So we are opening the windows." By the end of the week, the county scheduled a public hearing. The notice went online, dispute over Old Mill Lake to be reviewed by commissioners. Diane responded within hours. "Our community will not be silenced." Her followers flooded the comments section, but for every angry emoji, there was another user posting screenshots of the federal memo, the deed, the CR-48 photographs. The tide was shifting. People were starting to read instead of react. The morning before the hearing, I met Vernon Ashford at a diner just outside town. He was early, sipping black coffee, a folder on the table. "You sure you are ready for this?" he asked. I nodded. "You?" He smiled faintly. "Been ready since 2003. He slid a document across. "Board minutes you have not seen. This one is from 99 Diane's motion to collect mandatory lake fees. She told homeowners the money went to insurance. The policy never existed. I read the page twice. That is fraud." "Exactly," Vernon said. "And the homeowners who trusted her deserve to know." That night I could not sleep. I watched the lake on my phone screen, camera feeds glowing green in the dark. Nothing moved except wind. At 2 a.m., headlights flashed near the shore. A car door opened. Diane stepped out alone, walking toward the sign. She stood there for a full minute, hands on hips, staring at the metal plate as if willing it to vanish. Then she turned and drove away. Even from a distance, I could see her face tired, desperate, cornered. Power was slipping through her fingers, and she knew it. The day of the hearing arrived gray and humid. I wore a plain suit, nothing flashy. Claire met me on the courthouse steps, holding a USB drive. "Everything's on here," she said. "Documents, video evidence, federal transfers, emails, even the vandalism footage. Today is not about anger, it is about precision." Inside the chamber buzzed like a beehive. Reporters lined the back wall, neighbors filled the seats, and Diane sat at the front beside Russell Blackwell, both in matching expressions of confidence they had not earned. When the commissioners entered the room, quieted, the chairwoman, Lydia Vaughn, spoke first. "We are here to determine rightful ownership and access rights concerning Old Mill Lake." Diane stood, all practiced charm. "Commissioners, this lake has been the soul of our neighborhood for 40 years. Mr. Holloway's actions threaten that legacy." Her voice trembled just enough to sound human. She painted me as an outsider, a speculator, a villain with a deed. When she finished, half the room applauded. Vaughn nodded politely. "Thank you, Miss Pritchard. Mr. Holloway, you may respond." I connected Claire's USB to the projector, and the first slide appeared. The 1948 federal memo. The line glowed on screen. "No public easement unless recorded." Gasps rippled through the room. I kept my tone even. This is not about feelings. It is about record. Every document I own, every signature here, matches county files. The HOA has been told since 1975 that they have no legal claim. I clicked again. Letters, memos, the 1985 advisory, the 2001 email with Diane's handwriting. Ignore. Continue access. The room shifted. Murmurs spread. Russell whispered urgently, but Diane's eyes darted like trapped light. Then Vernon stepped forward, voice shaking but clear. "My name is Vernon Ashford. I was the treasurer. Everything you have just seen is true. We collected money for a lake we did not own." A commissioner leaned forward. "Did you tell the homeowners?" "No," Vernon said. "Diane told us not to. Said the law was for people who get caught." The crowd erupted. Vaughn's gavel cracked against wood. Order. When silence returned, Claire addressed the bench. "Commissioners, the county's position is simple. The HOA never recorded an easement. Their continued collection of fees constitutes fraud. Ownership rests with Mr. Holloway. Access, if any, must be lawfully negotiated." The vote was swift, 5-0. Old Mill Lake was declared private property. The county ordered the HOA to cease all activity and referred the matter for criminal review. Diane's face drained of color. She stood abruptly, pointing at me. "You will regret this," she hissed. I did not reply. Fletcher, standing near the exit, met my eyes and gave a single nod the kind cops give when a storm has finally broken. Outside cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. I said nothing. The only voice I wanted to hear was the one inside me whispering, "It is over." But Claire corrected me as we reached her car. "No," she said, buckling in. "This part is over. Now comes justice." That night, news stations aired the footage. The federal memo, the emails, Vernon's testimony, it spread like wildfire. By midnight number, Old Mill Lake was trending statewide. Some called me a hero, others a villain, but none could deny the facts. The truth was public now, and once the light hits something that has lived too long in shadow, it never looks the same again. I drove back to the lake long after dark. The air was still. The water mirrored the stars. I walked to the stone, ran my fingers over its cracks. "You held the secret long enough," I whispered. Time to rest. For the first time since I bought this place, I felt peace, not victory, just stillness. But I knew better than to think the fight was finished. Power does not vanish when it loses, it waits. And somewhere Diane Pritchard was waiting too. After the vote, the courthouse emptied like a shaken hive. Neighbors streamed into the parking lot, some shouting, some crying, some just silent. I stayed inside for a while, watching through the tall windows as Diane climbed into her car. The look she gave me was not anger anymore, it was something colder. Not loss, not fear. calculation. Like she was already writing her next move. Claire stood beside me, arms crossed, watching her leave. "She is not done," she said quietly. "People like her never lose gracefully." "I do not need her to lose," I replied. "I just need the truth to stick." Claire glanced at me, then smiled faintly. "Truth does not stick on its own. You have to hammer it in." The next morning, the story broke on every local channel. HOA fraud exposed scrolled beneath my name in bold white letters. They aired clips from the hearing, flashes of Vernon's testimony, and the moment Diane was cornered by the commissioner's questions. By noon, the HOA office was surrounded by reporters. That afternoon, Claire called. "Merrick's opening a formal investigation," she said. "Fraud, misappropriation, destruction of property, maybe even tax evasion." I sat on the tailgate of my truck overlooking the lake. The water looked different now, lighter somehow, like it could breathe again. "What happens to Diane?" "She will get served," Claire said. "And she will do what people like her always do, deny everything." Vernon called later that evening. His voice cracked on the first word. "Grant, they are calling me. Old board members. Some of them are panicking. Some begging me to retract. One even offered money." "What did you tell them?" "That I have been waiting 20 years to tell the truth." "Good," I said. "Hold that line." He laughed softly. "I spent half my life afraid of Diane Pritchard. I think I am done with that." By Friday, the sheriff's department froze, the HOA's bank accounts, the county seized financial records. Social media exploded. Some homeowners defended Diane, others demanded her resignation. A petition circulated online. "Remove the board. Restore honesty." Thousands signed. That night, as the headlines multiplied, I walked back to the water. The moon hung low, pale and solid as bone. My reflection shimmered beside the sign, "Private Property County, deed on file." I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt tired. Because winning a war like this does not give you peace, it just changes the noise. 2 days later, Fletcher called. "You should come down to the station," he said. "We have got something." When I arrived, he handed me a folder. Inside were printouts, emails, financial transfers, personal notes. "We searched Diane's office," Fletcher said. "Found evidence she had been transferring HOA funds into a private account for community maintenance. Over $60,000 since 2001. Where did she keep it?" "Offshore," he said grimly. "We are coordinating with the DA. Charges are coming." I set the folder down. "What about the others?" 4 board members knew. "We have emails. You started something bigger than you think, Grant." That night, I drove out to Vernon's house. He opened the door before I could knock. "You heard I asked." He nodded. They raided her office, took boxes. He motioned for me to sit. The house smelled like coffee and old wood. "You know," he said quietly. "For years I thought if I kept quiet, it would protect me. But silence does not protect anyone. It just builds walls around guilt." "You broke yours," I said. "Maybe," he said, "but you tore the rest down." The following week, the county announced a second public session, a review of HOA financial misconduct. Claire wanted me there. "You are not obligated," she said, "but your presence will remind people that this is not just legal, it is moral." "I will be there," I said. "I owe the truth that much." The night before the session, I could not sleep. Rain hit the roof, steady and soft. I poured a glass of whiskey and opened the folder from the sheriff's office. There was one photo inside I had not noticed before. Diane standing beside the old lake sign in 2001, smiling, surrounded by families. For a moment, I saw the version of her the neighborhood still believed in. The leader, the caretaker, the woman who made rules to keep things safe. Maybe she had started with good intentions. But power does not rot overnight. It spoils slowly, one compromise at a time. The next day, County Hall was packed again. This time, there were no signs, no cheers, just eyes, watching, waiting. Diane sat alone. Her lawyer, Russell, was gone. Claire presented the financial evidence, transactions, signatures, false maintenance invoices. Vernon testified again, voice firm now. "We lied," he said plainly, "and we charged people for the privilege." When the commissioners voted to dissolve the HOA's financial authority, no one clapped. The room was too quiet for celebration. The kind of quiet that comes after a wound's been exposed, raw and real. Outside rain began to fall, washing the dust off the courthouse steps. Claire stood beside me under the awning. "You did good," she said. "It does not feel like it. That is because justice never feels good. It just feels right." By the weekend, the county's press release made it official. The HOA board was under criminal investigation. Diane resigned. Her house went dark. Some said she had left town. Others said she was lawyering up. I did not care which. What mattered was that the lake and the land was finally free from her shadow. Still, I could not shake one thought. What if I had never found that stone? What if I had never looked twice at CR 48? The truth would still be buried beneath moss and mud, and a lie would keep feeding generations of neighbors who did not know any better. Sometimes history needs someone stubborn enough to dig. A week later, the county engineer, Dr. Helen Cross, came out to verify the marker. She was tall, quiet, methodical, her boots sinking into the damp shoreline. "This carving," she said, brushing dirt from the stone, "is genuine. Granite from the 1,940 seconds, cut with a federal chisel mark. It has not moved in 70 years. I watched her sign the verification sheet. So it is official. It always was," she said, smiling slightly. "It just took someone to prove it." When she left, I stood alone by the water. The wind rippled across the surface, carrying the smell of pine and iron. My phone buzzed another message from Claire. "County wants to discuss a public easement proposal. You will like this one." I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "Set it up." 3 days later, I sat across from Commissioner Vaughn, Claire, and a county attorney. Vaughn laid out the papers. "Here is the proposal. A recorded, limited access easement, county maintained, open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., property tax credits in return. You retain full ownership. The HOA has no authority. I read every line twice, and it gets recorded." Paul, the attorney, nodded. "Recorded. Filed. Permanent." I leaned back. "Then it is a deal." That afternoon I signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Vaughn smiled. "For the first time in 70 years, Old Mill Lake will be open legally and transparently." Claire extended her hand. "Congratulations, Grant. You just turned a fight into a precedent." I shook her hand. "Let us hope it sticks." When I returned to the lake, construction crews were already at work. They built a small gravel parking area, installed a gate, and set a new sign. OLD-MILLLAK Public Access Authorized under County Easement Recorded 2025. Below it, in smaller letters, Property Owner, Grant Holloway. The air smelled of wet metal and new beginnings. Families would come soon, kids with fishing rods, parents with folding chairs, but this time they would not be trespassing. They would be walking through a gate built on truth, not assumption. As the sun set, I stood at the edge of the water, watching the surface turn gold. The fight was over. The silence felt earned. But beneath it, I sensed something else, a kind of gratitude from the land itself, as if the lake had been waiting all along for someone to tell its story right. I ran my hand along the new gate, the cool metal firm beneath my palm. Fletcher's cruiser pulled up behind me. He stepped out, hands in pockets. "Looks different," he said. "Yeah," I said. "So does everything." He nodded toward the water. "You gonna stick around?" "I think I will," I said. "It is time someone looked after it the right way." He smiled faintly. "Not bad for a guy who stole a lake." I laughed, the sound echoing softly over the water. "Yeah," I said. Funny how the truth changes things. 3 weeks later, they called it a public reopening. But to me, it felt more like a confession. The county installed the last piece of fencing on a warm Friday morning, the kind of morning that smelled like rain that had not decided whether to fall. The sign was already up, polished steel gleaming under soft sunlight. OLD Mill Lake Public Access Authorized County Easement recorded. The date beneath it made me pause 73 years after the federal project had been canceled. I ran my hand across the engraved letters, felt the faint vibration of drills and hammers behind me, and thought, it is finally legal. The next day, the parking lot filled before noon. Families with coolers and folding chairs, kids dragging fishing rods, a pair of reporters setting up cameras near the gate. I stood to one side, watching. The ribbon stretched across the new gate fluttered in the breeze, bright red against the silver bars. Commissioner Vaughn adjusted the microphone stand while Claire checked her notes. Vernon sat in the front row of folding chairs, his hands clasped tight on his knees. He had worn a clean blue shirt, the first time I had seen him without flannel. He looked lighter, like a man who had finally put something down he had been carrying too long. At 2 o'clock sharp, Vaughn tapped the mic. Today, she began, marks the official opening of public access to Old Mill Lake under a recorded county easement. For the first time in 70 years, this land's history and its law are finally aligned. She turned slightly toward me. Mr. Holloway purchased this property legally, discovered the absence of a recorded easement, and worked with this county to correct that oversight. What could have become a permanent feud became a precedent for transparency. People applauded quiet, polite, uncertain. Vaughn continued, her tone shifting. For years, residents were misled about their rights to this lake. The previous HOA leadership collected fees for property they did not own. Thanks to the investigation led by County Counsel Donovan and testimony from Mr. Ashford, the record is now clear. The HOA's authority here has been dissolved, and the truth finally recorded. She gestured toward the gate. Mr. Holloway, would you like to say a few words? For a moment, I thought about saying no. I had spent enough time in front of crowds that hated or misunderstood me. But as I looked around the families, the kids, the neighbors who had once yelled thief from across the road, I realized it was not about me. I stepped to the microphone. I did not buy this lake to take it away from anyone, I began. I bought it because I believed in what it could be, a place with clarity, not conflict. I looked at the crowd, saw a few familiar faces soften. A lot of you were lied to. You paid fees, followed rules, believed what you were told. That was not your fault. The system failed you. But today, it is fixed. This easement is not charity. It is correction. It means the next time your kids walk down this path, they will not be trespassing. They will be walking through truth. There was a pause, then quiet applause. Not loud, not cinematic, real. The kind of sound people make when they are still processing the weight of what just ended. Vaughn smiled, cut the ribbon, and the crowd moved forward through the gate. Kids ran down the slope, tossing pebbles into the water. A father unfolded a camping chair, sighing like a man reclaiming something he did not realize he had lost. I stayed back with Vernon. He leaned on his cane, watching. You did it, he said softly. We did, I corrected. He chuckled. Maybe, but you were the only one stubborn enough to see it through. Stubborn is just patience with a purpose. He smiled at that. You should write that down. A few reporters drifted over, asking for quotes. I gave them the same line I had told Claire weeks earlier. I did not win anything. I just told the truth loud enough for it to be heard. They wrote it down like it was profound, but it was not. It was just what happens when you stop letting silence make the rules. By evening, the crowd thinned. The gate stood open, the red ribbon curled on the gravel like a shed skin. Vernon sat on the bench by the shore, eyes on the sunset. I joined him. The lake glowed orange and gold, the air still, the water finally calm. Funny, he said. For years I thought peace was just the absence of conflict. Turns out it is the presence of truth. I nodded. Peace has to be built. You cannot inherit it. Claire arrived as the light faded, clipboard in hand, heels crunching on gravel. Press wants one last photo, she said. You two with the gate. Vernon groaned, but stood. The camera flash went off, catching us mid-laugh. Later that photo ended up on the front page of the County Tribune under the headline, After the Fight, How One Man Made the Law Clear. I did not save the article, but I kept the photo. A week later, I drove by the lake at dawn. The new gate gleamed wet from rain, and the sign reflected the headlights like a mirror. A fisherman's truck was parked near the lot, and a mother and her son stood by the shore. The boy pointed at the stone marker, tracing the CR-48 carving with his hand. "What does that mean?" I heard him ask. His mother smiled. "It means someone finally told the truth." I parked farther down the road and walked along the water. The air was cool, filled with that clean silence that only exists after storms have passed. Every part of this place looked different because, for the first time, it was honest. No more trespassing signs. No secret rules, just balance. Later that morning, Claire called. The DA's office finished the case review. Charges filed against Diane and 2 former board members: fraud, misappropriation, destruction of property. They will see court within the month. I did not cheer. I just nodded to myself. "Justice does not rush," I said. "No," Claire replied. "But it arrives eventually." After we hung up, I walked to the CR-48 stone one last time. The county had cleaned it, sealed the surface, preserved it as a historical marker. The eagle engraving caught the sunlight like a small flame. I crouched, touched the granite, and whispered, "You can rest now." A truck pulled up behind me. Fletcher stepped out, holding 2 coffees. "Figured you would be here." I took one. "Cannot seem to stay away." He nodded toward the lake. "Most people do not realize what you did. They will just see the gate, not the fight." "That is fine," I said. "Gates are not for credit. They are for crossing." He smirked. "So what is next?" I looked out across the water. Maybe nothing. Maybe that is the point. That night, the news reported the charges formally filed. They showed a short clip of the ribbon cutting, Vaughn's speech, and then a shot of me by the gate, hands in pockets, face half turned toward the light. The anchor said, "What began as a local dispute over property rights has become a statewide model for transparency in HOA governance." I turned off the TV halfway through. It was not my story anymore. It belonged to everyone who had believed the truth was too small to matter until it was not. Weeks passed. The lake settled into routine. Families fished. Teenagers swam. Rangers checked permits. Nobody fought anymore. Sometimes I would drive by at sunset and see reflections of people laughing on the surface, where once there had been shouting. That was enough. On a quiet Sunday, I walked to the bench where Vernon used to sit. He had passed away 2 months after the ceremony, peacefully in his sleep. The new plaque on the bench read, "In honor of Vernon Ashford, truth is worth the trouble." I traced the letters with my thumb, smiled, and sat down. The lake was calm, silver in the fading light. I thought about everything: the crowd, the hearings, the files, the stone, about Diane, wherever she was now, maybe watching the news, maybe pretending none of it had ever happened. And I thought about how easily lies take root when no one checks the soil. The sun dipped behind the trees, the light turning gold one last time across the water. A family packed their gear and walked toward the gate, the boy holding his mother's hand. Before they left, he turned back and waved at me. I waved back. The world felt lighter than it had in months. I stood, looked one last time at the water, and whispered to the air, "Justice is not about winning. It is about restoring what should have never been taken." Then I turned, walked toward my truck, and left the gate open behind me. As I drove away, the reflection of the sign caught in my rearview mirror, "Public Access Authorized County Easement Recorded 2025. The lake shimmered behind it, quiet, complete, alive. 3 months after the lake reopened, peace stopped feeling like an event and started feeling like routine. The headlines faded. The news trucks left. The county moved on to other disputes about zoning permits and budget approvals, but the water remained still, reflecting sky instead of conflict. Every morning, I would drive the gravel road, park near the gate, and walk down with a thermos of coffee. Not to check on anything, just to be present. After all the years of noise, stillness had become something worth guarding. The new sign stood where the old battles began. Old Mill, Lake Public Access, Authorized County Easement Recorded. The letters had not dulled. The bolts had not rusted. And beneath it, mounted on a bronze plate, was a smaller inscription added by the county without telling me first, in recognition of those who protected truth through law and courage. I did not need my name on it, but it was there anyway. Grant Holloway, 2025. Seeing it still felt strange, like reading someone else's obituary. People had stopped calling me the man who stole the lake. Now I was just Grant again, the guy who owned the property by the water, the one who fixed the fence, lent tools, waved to kids fishing off the shore. Sometimes they would ask questions about the fight, the hearing, Diane. I would just say, "We figured it out," and leave it there. The full story belonged to the records now, buried in county archives alongside the CR-48 file, where truth could live quietly without needing applause. I saw Fletcher now and then. He would drive by, window down, patrol cap tipped low. "You keeping the peace, Holloway," he would call out. "Trying to," I would answer. He would grin. "Good. It is a rare thing these days." And he was right. Claire stopped by less often. The case had made her something of a local celebrity, invited to panels, interviews, even a law school seminar titled The Holloway Precedent. When we met for coffee one afternoon, she looked tired but proud. "You know," she said, "we have had 4 counties adopt similar easement rules since your case." I smiled. "So you are saying we started something?" She shook her head. "No, you did. I just filed the paperwork. We talked about Vernon, too. His memorial bench had become a quiet landmark. People left small stones, wildflowers, even folded notes. One note read, 'My dad told me the lake was not ours. He was right. Thank you for proving it.' I read it twice before leaving it there, weighted by a pebble so the wind would not carry it away. Diane never came back. The paper said she had accepted a plea deal, 18 months, suspended sentence, restitution, and permanent disqualification from serving on any board. Her house went up for sale, her name scrubbed from HOA records like it had never existed. I did not celebrate when I read it. It just felt finished, like closing a door that had been left open too long. But every so often, the echoes returned. A memory of that first confrontation, her shouting across the water, the crowd's disbelief, the flashing patrol lights. It did not haunt me, exactly. It reminded me why I had fought so hard. Because ownership is not about possession, it is about responsibility. One chilly morning, late autumn, I found a young couple standing by the gate. They looked nervous, holding a picnic basket between them. "Morning," I said. "Hi," the woman answered. "We were not sure if it is okay to be here this early." "It is okay," I said. "Gate opens at 6. You are good." She smiled, relieved. "We just moved into the subdivision. Heard about what happened here. Hard to believe something this peaceful was ever a war." I chuckled softly. "Yeah, it was ugly for a while." Her partner looked out across the lake. "It is good now, though. You cannot tell there was ever a fight." I sipped my coffee. That is the point. After they left, I walked to the stone again. The CR-48 mark was still sharp, the eagle engraving shining faintly in the cold light. The county had sealed it with a clear resin layer to preserve it through the seasons. Around its base, small wildflowers had started to grow. Nature was reclaiming what the argument had neglected. I crouched, brushed a bit of frost from the letters, and whispered, "We are good now." By winter, the lake froze thin along the edges. I built a small cabin on the northern ridge. Nothing fancy, just cedar walls, a stove, and a porch facing the water. At night, I would sit there, the wood crackling, the silence humming. Sometimes I would hear faint laughter from the other side of the lake, families skating or walking with lanterns. The same people who once accused me now waved when they saw me. Forgiveness, I learned, does not always come through words. Sometimes it just shows up and stays. One night I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar, elegant, deliberate. Inside was a single page. "Mr. Holloway, you were right. I was wrong. The truth does not belong to anyone. It just waits for someone to find it. I hope you can live at peace now. D. P." I stared at the initials for a long time. Diane Pritchard. I did not know where she was, did not need to. The apology was not for me. It was her final act of surrender to something larger than both of us. I folded the letter, slipped it into the back of the folder marked CR-48, and left it there. Some truths do not need framing. They just need acknowledgement. When spring returned, the county invited me to speak at a legal conference in Helena. The topic was property rights, public good, and the Holloway decision. I almost said no, but Claire convinced me. "You do not have to lecture," she said. "Just tell the story." So I did. I stood behind the podium, looking at rows of attorneys, planners, even a few judges. The law I began is not supposed to protect power. It is supposed to protect clarity. I did not fight an HOA. I fought confusion. And confusion only wins when nobody checks the facts. They clapped politely. One professor asked if I would do it again. I thought about the sleepless nights, the threats, the endless paperwork. "Yeah," I said, finally. Because some things are only worth having when you have earned them. When I drove home that evening, the sky was full of soft rain. The roads shimmered like glass. I passed the county line marker, then the familiar curve where the pines opened to reveal the lake. It looked timeless from that angle, a silver eye in the forest, watching, remembering. I parked near the gate and sat in silence for a while. The rain tapped the windshield, rhythmic, unhurried. Across the lake, the reflection of the new sign glowed faintly in the dusk. I thought of all the names that had been part of this story: Claire, Vernon, Fletcher, even Diane, and how each of them had left a mark. Justice is not one person's work. It is a chain of hands passing truth forward until it lands where it belongs. I walked to the shore, boots sinking slightly in the wet soil. The air smelled of pine needles and clean water. I crouched, touched the surface, and felt the cold bite of the lake, the kind that wakes you up, reminds you you are alive. The same water that once mirrored conflict now held peace. Behind me, a family arrived, 2 kids, a dog, laughter echoing. I stepped aside, nodded as they passed. The father thanked me, not realizing who I was. That is how I wanted it. The lake did not need a guardian anymore. It just needed to be itself. When I got back to the cabin, I lit the stove, poured a drink, and sat by the window watching fog curl over the water. I thought about the first night I stood here, when the air was filled with shouting and accusation. Now the only sound was wind. Progress is not always loud. Sometimes it is just the absence of anger. Later, I opened my notebook, the same one I had kept through the case. On the last page I wrote, "Truth endures quietly, law remembers, and water forgives." I closed the notebook, set it on the shelf beside the CR48 stone photo, and leaned back in my chair. Not a signature can take away what you build with purpose and patience, because true ownership, as the lake taught me, is not written on paper. It is written in the truth you fight for. If this story opened your eyes, hit like, share it with someone fighting their own battle, and subscribe for more stories of ordinary people standing up to extraordinary power. And remember, the next time someone tells you it is impossible, just smile and start digging.